It was my 4th anniversary of the rebooting recently, and I ran a little promotion. I don't know if I mentioned it here for TRB Pro memberships. Anyway, I have a new member who wrote me and said to split the attribution between the newsletter and this podcast. So, some attribution there. It's good to...
I don't understand what you
Does that mean
said.
Money?
Yeah.
I just want to rewind a little, Brian, for clarity. He said that the reason that he was subscribing was equally attributable to the podcast and the newsletter.
Yep.
Great. So that's our first bit of
that's
revenue.
$160 of ARR.
Yeah, it's a good start. Yeah, it's progress. I feel
It adds up. It adds up.
It does add up. Yeah.
And for those of you listening,
so we're
you can become
splitting the
TRB
three-
Pro members.
So
No,
half of
not
it
at all.
goes to the podcast, split by 3 between us.
Once it exceeds the production cost, then we'll talk about revenue splits. How's that? We got a little ways to go. Welcome to People vs. Algorithms, the show about detecting patterns in media, technology, and culture. As always, joined by the kingmaker, Troy Young. Troy, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for acknowledging my status.
No problem. And of course, Alex Schleifer, who's not at a conference this week. That's good to see, Alex.
Yeah.
You can take a little time
And Alex,
off.
and what does Alex represent on this podcast is sort of a very important, critical outsider view sprinkled with design and product.
Yeah.
And a little bit of a kind of woke mentality.
Jesus. Yeah, I represent Elon derangement syndrome.
Yeah, no, Alex is the voice of reason and of truth, of hard truths. You know, so he's emerged, I think, as a divisive figure.
Right.
I'm trying to make that happen.
And he's earning a little cash on the side as the Geico guy.
Yeah. I don't know what does that mean?
What does that mean? Do I look like a lizard? What?
No.
Like the caveman?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's
Yeah,
super
well, I haven't
dated.
shaved in a while. So
You know,
yeah,
Troy,
for
you made that point on this little panel. We did a panel. We did a trip. That was like
how did that go?
panel.
I mean, how
Well,
did that
Troy.
go? So you had a
Well, so
panel.
let me give my review of it, and then Troy can react to it. Right. So I played more of the traditional moderator role. You know, just like. You know, it's like kind of like being like the volleyball player that just sort of serves.
I.e., he didn't have anything to say, so he just passed it over to me, and I was ill prepared. And then the other guy basically had speaking notes promoting his company. It was
yeah. Well, I got to do that. But what was great is we were on the session with Andrew Swinand, who is a former CEO of Lear Burnett, and now he's the CEO of another agency in London. And what I liked about Andrew is we were talking beforehand, and yeah, he was just like a normal guy, like it was nice. But then when he got on stage, he just because this is the agency thing, you know this, Troy, right? He unspooled like all of these like statistic after statistic, and like he had like an opening statement ready to go.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, he sounds like a pro. How did Troy do it? Was it like...
Well, then
Biden
Troy
at the
was
last
on his
debate
heels,
type
to be
thing?
honest with you. Troy was a little bit on his heels.
I was. I didn't have.
It was
any
great. I loved it.
statistics.
I loved it.
People would...
Thank you for the invitation, Rashad and Drew. I had a good time.
It didn't go well?
No, I thought it went well. I thought he made some really interesting points. I mean, his basic point, I want to run this by you. So, I mean, he was basically saying, because this is what we talk
who's
about
he
with a
now?
lot.
Is that Troy or is
Andrew,
that the other guy?
Andrew, but then Troy too. Troy caught up, but then he caught Pete Blackshaw with a stray because he wrote a Ad Age article about FAQs. That was a highlight actually of the session. Maybe not for Pete, I don't know. But Andrew made this point that, you know, within the agency world, you know, AI is already on its way to making all the versioning work of quote unquote creativity a thing of the past. And that, you know, his whole thing was that if you look at the growth of independent agencies versus the big network agencies, it's very clear the direction it's going. And, you know, agency holding groups as a whole make their money off of, you know, the media buying because it's super opaque, it's super untransparent. I love the fact that they use the word transparently untransparent.
Isn't
Yeah,
that just
that
opaque?
sounds on the up and up. But his basic thing was like, you're going to have far fewer, you're going to have some super talented creatives, right? But that world will shrink. And, I think that is a really, basic, but kind of important point for a lot of these industries. Because I think of media as, I wrote about this today, it just goes first with a lot of these things. A lot of the pressures that are taking place and the compressions of the media business will absolutely come to contiguous industries and other industries, I think, without a doubt. I don't know, what was your takeaway from our conversation there, Troy?
I mean, I thought it was relatively like boring and undistinguished, and in fairness, I was not prepared with my opening statement. I would say what you just said is that, what strikes me is the fall from grace that careers in advertising have had since I joined the workforce, when it was particularly on the creative side, but even on the account side in agencies, was a vocation of esteem. And now to me, it's like a career it's like where you go if you have to go and you don't have a job and you're a liberal arts major, and that agencies just aren't really part of the conversation anymore. Like,
well, yeah, you made the point that like, you don't, what's a big ad camp? Like, I have no idea. And I think this is part of what I've been wondering about is, without mass media, why won't mass brands follow the same path? Well, aren't we like sort of like, mass brands really existed with mass media. And so if mass media is ending, and I think that's a fair point, then won't mass brands continue? Because they don't have the same hold overall on the culture. Leave aside the lock-in of the tech brands. Like, that's like a ridiculous, like totally different than, the regular,
just
like,
leave that
mass
aside.
Consumer brands.
I mean, that's mass media, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, what is?
Yeah, but their delivery channels are not mass, is the point. And I think that even though I think we went through like a DTC bubble where we saw like new entrants in all the categories, to this day, the most important use case, as far as I can tell, for Facebook is shopping. And I see new entrants in the sort of men's or kind of unisex clothing category all the time. And to me, like, that's totally a function of the ad buying and distribution mechanics of Facebook and Instagram, and I guess TikTok, that allow these little brands to find customers. Like, that's the same point, right? Like, small brands can exist and start up fairly rapidly. The access to product creation, manufacturing, and all of that is has been kind of democratized, and now you can find customers on Facebook. So you get a lot of niche players, just like you do in media.
I mean, Instagram is incredible as an ad product these days.
And as a shopping environment.
And the shopping, integrated shopping and everything like that is, they've done that full transition away after Apple, shut down all the tracking. It feels like they fully transitioned to a place where now I'm seeing a lot more kind of DTC brands coming up. So what was your question, Brian, about mass media brands and big brands?
Well, I guess my point is mass media is clearly, to me, it's clearly like ending. You look at this.
Can you define it for me, please? Because I find like I'm always quite uneducated on the topic as to how we define media.
Oh yeah, that's why we're doing a media podcast.
Well, media and technology podcast.
Yeah,
because we can talk about Fortnite, and you guys think it's Minecraft. So
we can talk about yes.
Nice one.
I don't think
we're all here
to educate. I don't think you read that article. That's why I was a little annoyed, because I didn't think.
This is one thing you need to know about Alex, is that he's great with he's less aggressive with the punch, but the punch back he's great at.
Yeah, it's good. Counterpunch.
Really.
That's the way you want to be. So mass media, I would define as what like arose with the consumer economy after World War II, right? It's centered in television for the most part, but mass media, we had mass media magazines. We had mass media in like newspapers. I think a lot of times people call
it's a shared cultural experience driven by a sort of oligopolistic media distribution structure.
Yeah, like a monoculture. But
that was well done, Troy. You should have brought that to the panel.
So when you're saying the end of mass media is more of the end of mass monoculture of everyone consuming the same type of stuff, because a lot of like media properties today have the same reach as like MASH had at the time, right? Technically,
No,
Mr. Beast.
Mm-hmm.
It's totally different. Like, I mean, like, let's go into the video game world, because you're itching to go into the video game world.
No, I'm not.
I'm ignorant. I'm ignorant.
I come
of the
here.
video
I come
game
here
world.
to have like a palate cleanser from all that stuff. But we can talk about it.
No, let's talk about it, because it's an area that
You want to talk about Fortnite as a cultural phenomenon?
yeah, because
Alex got all testy when Ryan Broderick wrote the article that said mass culture is created in Fortnite.
Yeah, like no duh. It's about ethics in game journalism.
What is Fortnite, Alex, for the idiots that listen to this podcast that don't know?
Fortnite is essentially at its core what is called a battle royale video game, where 100 people go in. You land randomly on an island. There's a zone that gets smaller and smaller, pushing people together, and they have to take each other out. And final team or final person wins the game. Now that's how it started. It actually started as a different game that was a failure, and then Epic just added this as a mode, and it became the biggest video game in the world, which is really kind of a wild.
Do you use guns to shoot people?
You use guns.
Is it what's called is it a first party shooter or whatever that's called?
First person shooter. It's both a first person shooter, but it's actually a third person shooter. So you see your characters from the back, and you run around this very colorful island. Now, what Fortnite has done is that they've added all these different modes and specifically events. The world keeps changing, and as it does, it kind of opens up a new season. They'll have a day where Godzilla stomps across the island. They'll have live concerts where everybody's kind of playing the game, gets sucked into this world where, I don't know, some artists things. So it's become kind of a place where kids hang out. The game has become not secondary, but it's kind of peripheral to the overall experience. It's very much like Ready Player One type stuff, where you put on your Spider-Man outfit, you go in with your friends, and you watch a concert. And kids,
is this something
incredible amount of time on it.
Do you do this?
Do I do this?
Mm-hmm. Is this for children? I think that's what Troy's asking. Is this for like functioning adults?
Fortnite is very, teenage boys are probably the biggest customer base. It's broadened out for sure, but it's like that's essentially the core audience here.
And
which is why I always think like calling it defining culture is interesting, because it does target a very specific demographic. Now gaming spreads much wider, but I think culture doesn't get defined by 12-year-old boys. And I'm not saying that Fortnite isn't important. It's hugely important. And I'm not saying that Fortnite doesn't have wide audience. It has people of all ages and genders playing Fortnite.
If you were explaining Fortnite to me and its significance in society and culture, what do I need to know, Alex?
I mean, I think that the main thing is like it's a mixture of essentially play, content, because there are stories, emergent stories, and kind of events that happened, and communication built into one. It's like a social network mixed with interaction, mixed with storytelling. So it's actually, I would say Fortnite is the first version of the metaverse as a kind of more complete package.
Has any packaged entertainment spun out of it?
No. However, a lot of entertainment has been kind of pulled into it. Every movie that comes out, right? They release skins. Epic, which is the company that runs it, which is also the company that's has won a case against Google and has been fighting Apple, has built a bunch of tools. So there's a giant ecosystem that's being built around that. As a game developer, our company could decide to just build on Fortnite today, build all our games on Fortnite, and tap into that audience.
Should the rebooting be on Fortnite?
We could technically be on Fortnite. Yeah, that would be great. But first, you'd need to learn how to control a character.
I can do that.
Yeah.
So it sounds like Second Life was just sort of like ahead of its time a little bit, and maybe not. Mark Kingdon is somewhere in Miami. Like, God damn it.
No, I mean, Second Night. Here's the thing. Like, Second Night wasn't fun. Second Night wasn't fun, and it was
why? I thought it was fun. You can throw like dildos at each other.
Yeah. Second Life wasn't fun, and there were so many layers to kind of like push through to get anywhere. that it attracted a very specific audience, and that audience just pushed everyone away. So it became this very niche product. But like conceptually, yes,
Yes.
I think Fortnite started with a game that was fun, that people genuinely like to play, and they had like, Epic built the engine, and their technology stack is so huge that now it's like there's a certain group of specifically boys, but teenage kids that only communicate over Fortnite. They get home, they jump on Fortnite, they hang out with their friends there, and then they go to bed. They don't really consume movies or use WhatsApp or whatever. It's all on Fortnite.
So is this like the new version of mass media then? Because it has different characteristics than what we talked about before, right? And I think that's interesting, because to me, the mass broadcast media is over. I think whatever becomes of mass media will be in some weird way more niche, because it isn't for everyone. I don't know about it, right? Like everyone knew about MASH when I was growing up. I mean, TV was just different, the monoculture, right? Like you said, it's going to be more interactive. It's going to combine, you're going to be a participant, not a just like passive, right? What else? Like, what are the characteristics? First of all, I guess, is that true? Like, is this the new version of mass media? And then what are the characteristics of it? And how does it differ from quote unquote old mass media?
I think it's a good question. I don't even know if you can call it media, because so much of it is like such a big part of it is just like kind of interaction in a space with communication. So it feels like, in quotes, that version of the metaverse that people have been talking about. And yes, you're consuming entertainment and brand messages and all these things, but it feels like something very different. So yes, maybe it's replacing mass media. It's also replacing a lot of other stuff, right? It's replacing for a lot of these kids, like going out in the streets and playing ball. It's like a totally digital version of your afternoon. So
if you wanted to pull it into what I think media companies have to be thinking about right now. So if you're a media company, you're saying, what is this? Let's call it, I don't know, is it 3.0, 4.0 shift, right? Whatever came after the kind of social media and search era. You're like, well, what's going to be our distribution? What's going to be unique that a media brand can do outside of, and the new aggregator, call that ChatGPT, or any of the new news aggregators, or anybody that's using interface to get above media, interface and technology. And one of them is got to be interactivity, right? And that's the ability to participate in an experience. Gaming is obviously the ultimate in interactivity, but gaming on the New York Times is interactivity. Closely related would be, well, not unrelated, I think, is your data set, or the thing that powers that experience, the unique data. And I say data in the broadest way, which could be numbers, statistics, profiles, search results, anything, have to be, kind of proprietary. And then I think thirdly, it's the power or the opportunity for a brand to create trust inside of that new environment, to the extent that trust is a differentiating factor in what someone's going to consume. We sometimes naively, I think, put too much emphasis on the who it came from, because increasingly it seems like we live in this kind of, this kind of universe that's like, 1,000 points of light, and we spend less time thinking about like, where did the message come from? And so I think trust is still important, and the media brand is a manifestation of that. But I certainly don't think you rely on that as being the thing that's gonna, that it's the starting point, but it's not the thing that's going to save you.
Mm. So how does this then impact? I mean, we're going to talk about, like, let's just talk about, media with the new aggregators. Because, like, as you said, getting upstream of the aggregators has been nearly impossible, I feel like, for most media. And now there's a new crop of aggregators that are...
Yeah, they're good too. Like, I'm finding them interesting.
Yeah.
Like Artifact. Well, yeah. Artifact was interesting.
It's Yahoo News now. It works.
It's not Yahoo News now, right? Particle is a new entrant in the aggregation space that uses AI extensively to help you navigate a lot of content, and it's kind of fun actually, and it is interactive, and it I believe the founder was the head of product at Twitter. I don't know the person. There's another one called Volve, Volve, which is sort of AI generated summaries of, the news that you just flick. You can sort of see how the interface allows you to navigate a huge amount of content really quickly. There's AI generated news, which is, I don't know if you've seen Break the Web, which is sort of like 10 stories a day or a couple times a day in a graphic intensive app interface. Perplexity is trying to do the same by bridging LLMs and the chat experience with actually the delivery of news. And they're extending that, across mediums. So they have an auto-generated newsletter and they have an auto-generated podcast, all of which are reasonably good products, I think. And so, those are all places that consumers are gonna, be certainly tempted by that offer no real economic salvation to a media brand.
Yeah. I think what the hard part is, like, all of these things are moving towards pigeonholing, particularly news brands, as just raw material providers and downstream of the value chain. If you look at like who is making the most money, particularly in news content, it's the people on top of the actual gathering of the facts. I mean, like we always point out that All In loves to take shots at the quote unquote mainstream media, but then is constantly referring to the reporting done by the mainstream media, either to say it's fake or if it actually goes with their point of view to say, yeah, there's this is proof point of it. And I think that that's happening. It's not just at the interface level. And I think that is a real challenge because all of the incentives, the economic incentives, are not to be gathering the news. It's to be manipulating the news, maybe. It's to use technology to manipulate it into a new package. It couldn't be like to provide a point of view or an opinion on top of the news.
Can I make a prediction?
I love predictions.
I think none of the apps that Troy mentioned will be around in 5 years. I think if you're just recompiling information that's all going to be provided to you by your operating system or Google or something like that, all that stuff is going to be, if you want facts, if you want access to facts, information, even something to kind of retell your story or tell you how a movie ends or whatever, that's just going to be like straight to the vein, directly to the OS. You're going to have these conversations. They're not going to be intermediaries that whatever deals you make today, they're not going to exist. The thing that is going to continue to exist, and it's kind of related to Fortnite, is it's entertainment. The All In podcast, the reason people like getting their news through that is because it's entertainment. It's through the lens of entertainment. People want play, right? Which is why Fortnite is there, and which is why, and it's the next. I think the next, and I'm not, and I don't mean to be kind of pitching my own book here, but the next frontier is not like how do we recontextualize this content? That's over. It's going to be how do we make this entertaining, and people are going to be more and more demanding, and it's going to be around like play and entertainment.
Yeah, well, that's you see some of that in Particle where you can recombine, sort, change, manipulate content in ways that's fun, like rewrite all the headlines as if it was The Onion. Mm-hmm. That's part of the. But
I can ask ChatGPT to do this right now, right?
Listen, they're the aggregator of those aggregators. So yeah. But the one thing I think that I would take away from it, and Brian, I would love your take on this, is to me text is being pushed down the stack. Like text is becoming increasingly commoditized.
Yeah,
and it's happening because LLMs can create and manipulate and reformat and make into new mediums any type of text. So text is now an input into the machine as opposed to an output.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I think that's a big thing for media companies that trade in text.
No, I think that's totally right. I mean, because like I'm just amazed. Claude is my sort of LLM of choice these days, but
it's great.
I just used it to do like 5 bullet point summary of, piece I wrote. It's pretty good. It's already pretty good. And I don't think it's going to get worse. And like there are all of these tasks, kind of what Andrew said about versioning. There's all of these things within the sort of text world that are frankly going to be better done by machines than by humans. And it's hard as a person who's produced a fair amount of texts in my day and continue to produce a lot of text. It might not be the most pleasant thing, but that's a reality, right? And I think, yeah, like you said, it's getting pushed down the value chain.
The only thing holding me back from subscribing to more newsletters is that I don't have an AI that's smart enough integrated into my email that can just give me a rundown of what's going on. I just want to just subscribe to when I want to subscribe and then just ask this thing, hey, what's happening right now? Yeah, I'm interested in this thing. Tell me more.
Well, first of all, Apple is doing that, right? Apple is summarizing. I mean, like if you look at the direction of travel, it's pretty clear. Apple will summarize all of your newsletters for you on the device. That's happening.
I see it kind of strategically manifest. I just had a kind of a conversation with a company I'm on the board of that's focused on the football media space, the soccer media space. And the idea, and you see this in the ESPN app, you can either start with statistics and numbers and things that you can manipulate around, the kind of data of the game, or you can start with articles about the game, or you can start with videos. And I think that as a publisher, we're having to kind of reprioritize this, because to me, the statistics side of it's getting more interesting because the statistics are leading to different gaming opportunities. Now, the ultimate one that monetizes best is obviously gambling, betting. But, this company, for example, is doing these really light parlays where you get to bet on 6 teams that are playing on Saturday. And if you get them all right, there's like a small reward. So it's sort of like betting light. But if you think about it as you've got all this data, from the players to the matches to the leagues, and you can start manipulating that, and then you can have fun with it. And if you really want to, you can place your bet. And that to me is the more, when you think about, say, the homepage as a surface area, that's the number one thing, because, chatbots don't do that as well. The number 2 thing is probably how do we entertain with video? And then the number 3 thing is how do we put smart interfaces on this corpus of millions of pieces of content that used to be the lead thing that are now secondary to me. And I just think that's a point of the departure in the publishing market.
I used to host the holiday party game show at Digiday. I might have to bring that back. It's like a career choice.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think that was a nice.
People say we're too down on everything, on media and everything like that. But any optimistic thoughts?
Oh, so actually, I'm not. I wrote a little bit. You're not a subscriber, so you don't have access to it. But everyone else can subscribe. You get a 20% discount.
I just don't read newsletters, man. It's just too. I have good friends that write them, and I have a huge list of things that I feel guilty about.
I will feed this shit into Notebook LM and personally deliver you a.
That would be great.
So, like, if you want, but I'll have Snoop Dogg. Right?
I mean, make a podcast out of it. We've been talking about that forever.
Maybe. I mean, we'll see if that's.
Like, if you made a podcast out of it, I would definitely consume that.
Okay, cool. All right.
You know what?
Use the code.
You know what I'm actually really excited about? I was diagnosed with ADHD, and God knows what that means. It can mean 100 different things. But
is that real? Is that a real diagnosis, though?
Oh, it's definitely real, man. If anything, it's real because when you take Adderall, your whole body calms down rather than get hyper. So you kind of know that's one of the telltale signs. Although Adderall is not for me. School and going through just stuff in life where I had to consume a lot of information in a certain way, right? That was written in a certain way. It was so against the way my brain worked my whole life. My whole life I pushed against it, right? And I really struggled with school and things like that. And yet I'm a relatively fast learner if the information is in the right place. And I can tell you that this age where information can get recontextualized and I can ask it to write it in bullet points and I can ask it to read it out for me has been the last 2 years has been incredible for someone like me to be
Yeah.
able to finally learn things like music theory or some computer concepts that I never got to because I just couldn't process that information.
Self-help. Have you been doing a lot of self-help?
I mean, yes, in a sense. But what I'm saying is that I think we'll discover that there's so many different types of brains, and the people who usually end up writing are usually the people who end up liking to read stuff that is written. But that there's a huge part of the population that doesn't want to consume information like that. And now, for the first time, we're actually going to be asking the consumer to say, how do you want that information? Imagine all that data, and people will notice, shit, I only have to write 5 words, or maybe it has to be like this. And that was never an option. That was never an option.
I don't know. I mean, I'm biased.
I want my MTV, Alex.
But the most successful people, the one thread is they're all like voracious readers. They're all voracious readers. I'm long reading. I think it's a competitive advantage to be able to have the self-control to read a book these days. And I mean, I don't think you get that.
I can tell you, I'm more successful than
reading Snoop Dogg.
Like, I get it. But
there's a lot of ways to succeed. I
know, and I think that there's a world. I think that there's a bias right now because the people who like to write create the type of content that they want to see, and that's fine. We just had, I think.
Do you think that the people in power are biased towards readers? Maybe that's
Trump
why
has not read a book in at least 15 or 20 years.
And I'm not saying, guys, I can read a book, right?
He didn't read his own book.
That doesn't matter. Let's not talk about Trump. I'm saying it's not that I don't like long form reading. I think I especially when it comes like to fiction, I really enjoy that. I like getting immersed in the world. When it comes for me, learning, reading, getting real, very specific value out of stuff, it is incredibly time consuming and harder for me to consume information in the way that it's presented currently. I wonder how many other people feel the same.
There's a lot, Alex. I think there's a lot. I've had this conversation with one of my kids who much prefers consuming books via audio.
So wait, is reading dying?
Well, what made reading? I think there's this academic grandstanding that like reading was the only way we should consume information, as if as apes that's what we decided to do. Like, look, we're
I don't know. Gutenberg was a pretty important.
Yes, at the time, because that was the way to transport content, because we didn't have, guess what we didn't have? We didn't have an MP3 that you could send over space in a second.
So Adam Curry is going to go down in history as like the new Gutenberg.
Maybe. What I'm saying is actually maybe more profound than that, is that people will write content, will put content out into the world in the way that they feel comfortable, in the tone that they feel comfortable. And then people will consume that content in the way that they feel comfortable. This is like, it's such a profound change to the way we exchange information with each other. I think we're going to learn a lot about things. And it's also going to make people lazy, and it's also going to kind of destroy our attention span and all that stuff. But, I think we with every new technology, like our brains change a little bit. And this is one of the ones where I feel we'll look back and say, wow, for the past, few hundred years, we've been kind of really stuck in that one modality of how information should be consumed and transferred.
So text was overvalued is basically what we're saying. It had.
You're always trying to get like the headline out of us.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to do, because it's compelling. It's good. I can sell that.
But Brian, yeah, that's the job of the moderator, Alex.
You don't have to like fucking dissect the frog in front of everyone. I was just making banter here.
Okay, so
sorry, that's my point. I'm the disruptor on the podcast.
You're the free part. You're the, what is it?
Free radical.
Free radical. Okay, Brian, but you had made the point, and I just want to get your take on this, that this sort of, you called it the end of mass media, is definitely manifest in how this election is playing out.
It's just so stark. The other day I opened the New York Times app.
Break it down for us. Help us understand it and its consequences.
Well, like we're in the home stretch to the election. This is when all the political reporters bring out every cliche that it's a dash, the candidates are dashing, and it's a blitz and like all this. And when you look at where this is make or break time, when you look at where the closing arguments are being made, the New York Times was aggregating an interview that Kamala Harris gave to Charlemagne the God okay, not technically a podcaster or a radio host, but like of that ilk. She's going on Joe Rogan. I mean, Trump has been on like every other podcast. The mass media overall is being ignored. I mean, Time just threw a fit that Kamala Harris did not sit for an interview with Time magazine. I'm sorry, but like, I'm sorry, Jess, but like that is not a big
sit for an interview with us at this stage.
That is not a big L. Like, I mean, who is Time reaching that is more important than these niches that a lot of these alternative media are reaching? And I tuned in last night. This is also a product problem because I decided to actually look at the Brett Baer interview of Kamala Harris because I'm like, maybe I'll get something new. At the very least, if she does the middle class thing, it'll be kind of funny. And I couldn't watch it for longer than 5 minutes. The bickering, the talking over. I think it's almost like those late night TV tropes where they have those fake stories. You called it like the uncanny valley of media, right, Alex? I thought that was really smart because...
I mean, talk about uncanny valley. Brett Baer looks like an AI.
But it was like, it was awful to listen to. And I would much rather Theo Von and Donald Trump is better than that.
And the thing is but that's because like that's their format and that's how they're pitching to their audience. But that the emergence of podcasts, right, has been once again, right? Like I think there were early adopters in podcasts. It took a long time to get here, but just the power of not only audio but the format of a podcast where you sit down and listen to somebody talk through. There's no way this can be transferred to text. There's no way that you can get that emotion and that feeling and the pauses or anything like that. And TV is just too impractical to consume at scale at this stage. But podcast is you have it in your ear while you do the dishes, you know?
I honestly I don't know if I would agree to like a profile. You know, like if I was a prominent person, nobody's writing a profile on me. But like, I don't know if I would agree because
it
like
goes into a black hole and somebody rewrites everything you said. It's crazy. Why would you do that?
That's a really interesting point.
Remember when we wrote that profile of you, Troy, that called you brusque?
You wrote that?
No, I didn't write it. Lucia wrote it.
Oh yeah, that's nice. She did a nice job.
I would agree with that.
But you called me. You're pissed about it. About the brusque comment. I mean, and I get that.
The best one was Michael
material.
Sebastian wrote a profile of me in Ad Week. Michael Sebastian.
Is that how he got the job?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's the oldest of the old school tricks. I love that.
That was the sort of wrecking ball analogy.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah, and that one that was when that Miley had that big hit. It was.
I don't know. I don't understand any of these references. I hope our audience does.
Miley Cyrus. You don't know Miley Cyrus?
You know the song "Wrecking Ball"?
She's popular in the culture.
You're just jumping around. Okay, great.
I'm not jumping around. I want to finish this. I'm going to do what I do, which is sort of a hostile moderating takeover.
You're just being brusque.
Yes, but Brian,
my point was it was better than asshole. That is.
But was it truer?
I thought it was fine.
That asshole is my friend. Okay. So, but can you help us understand who's played this new media environment more effectively and why?
I think it's going to be fascinating to see at the end who ends up, because I think of like Kamala Harris has run a more traditional campaign. She gets to her talking points. Trump was swaying to like Sinead O'Connor in front of a bunch of people.
For 38 minutes.
I have no idea if this is genius or pure lunacy, but it'll be interesting. I think Trump is a natural this new environment.
I don't think it was Sinead O'Connor. I think it was Hallelujah, interpreted by Rufus Wainwright. That was originally a Leonard Cohen
There was
song.
40 minutes. He
reacted to that was one of them.
Nothing Compares to You is a great slow
He's like,
song.
don't play that shit. That's my song. Don't do that.
Yeah, none of these artists wanted to be on that stage with him.
Yeah. There are no more slow songs these days.
But what about the YMCA guys? They don't mind.
Well, I think he has to get people who are dead because they can't object then. That's why he's doing Ave Maria.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So
I think Trump is a natural environment. We've said this before. We've disagreed, but like, I think he's a natural for this environment.
Brian, we do not disagree, but he's a natural insofar as like he's an amoeba that's thriving in it. You know what I mean? I don't think there is a board with a master plan. I thought
you were going to say maggot.
Yeah, but like, I would make the argument that having instincts is better than having a strategy in this kind of chaos.
I mean, I guess the only thing that I ever disagree with is when people use the term strategy, right? Like, I think there's a strategy when you kind of sit down and plan stuff out. I think there's just people who have reflexes that turn out to be correct. That's not a strategy.
Oh yeah, he's
reflexive.
He's like, what's his name? Johnny Manziel. Like, he would run around in the backfield. Like, there was no strategy going on with Johnny Manziel, and he didn't end up having a very fruitful.
He's definitely a natural. The media ecosystem is at the right temperature and the right amount of moisture for him to thrive, and he's just spreading all over it.
So
like, I want to like when the power goes out and you leave a fridge door open. That's what happens.
My mom scared me about this. She was like, do you clean out your fridge before you like leave? Because like if there's a hurricane, you'll have like rotting chicken in there and then you'll have to get an entire new refrigerator. I was like, really? I never thought about the dangers of leaving chicken in a refrigerator.
I mean, chlorine will get rid of everything, but...
Okay, that's what I thought. I was like, refrigerators were old back when this...
Yes, this is what people come to this podcast for, by the way.
We can cut that out. But I want to...
No, let's not cut it out.
I want to move that because it was on my mind.
It's frustrating Troy, so therefore it's good.
I know, I saw the voice of Troy.
He's like, he can't sit still.
You guys know that I get frustrated
when
we beat the dead horse. So let's move on.
Okay, let's move on because I want to just dwell for a little bit on how you think about careers in this kind of environment, right? Because like my working theory in general is media, and particularly text media, goes first, right? A lot of the pressures and the compression that we're seeing in this industry are going to spread to other industries. And what I'm seeing a lot of is I think that this is actually a time to be a generalist, a new kind of generalist of sorts, because when we talk about like the negativity, we talk about like big media companies, I have totally different conversations with people who have 1 to 5 to 10 person media companies. There are so many opportunities out there in the media business. It's just not a lot of these big media companies because they're trying to retrofit old models. They're trying to get slimmer. They're battling with unions. They got screwed over by platforms, ad tech. Continues to be like kind of a mess for them, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of the needs out there that I see, and this came up a lot at that Athena Project conference, is people who are kind of generalists who are able to do a bunch of different things. I was talking with one executive about this, and the idea of people just being complete specialists, like, no, I just do sales. I don't do the sales deck. Someone else does that. And like, you need to be able to do a bunch of different things out there. Like, you can't just be, I think of like Vanya, who produces this podcast. We should give like Vanya a lot more. We should give her the credit she deserves. She's a designer, but she also produces podcasts. I feel like you need to be, it's not like generalist, but it's a new kind of generalist where you have to be able to cover just far more ground to have to protect yourself in some ways, because the old career path is gone. It is not coming back. I mean, I shared that with you guys about the accountants. Like, what was a more safe career than going into accounting? Okay. And they're projecting like complete decline in accountants. Too bad. Learn to code. You saw the developer statistics. It's like, I just think how people think of their quote unquote careers has to completely change. Thoughts?
I mean,
Thoughts, comments, questions.
I think about that. I get asked that a lot about designers and product designers. And I don't remember who it was that said he wanted his kids to grow up resilient. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like, just like develop an intelligence, spread your knowledge out so you can do a lot of different things. And all of a sudden, you'll notice that the more interests you have, the more you can learn things quickly and adapt to what's coming up. So when some new change arises, you have the intuition to say, oh, this is how I could use this. I think I fell into that path because I was always bad at becoming a deep expert at anything. So I was always like...
Well, you're a trained designer.
Yeah, right? But he was always like this. So it was like him and his friend, a couple of friends and his brothers on the island with some
in the
donkeys.
Treehouse? This is in the Treehouse?
No, I mean, there was like, they didn't have specialists.
We all did everything.
They all did everything. And that's what I loved about Alex when I met him. I want to connect 4 thoughts here, 4 thoughts that I think are important. And the one is, obviously, there's now this like kind of strata of tools that make more disciplines and more sort of functions accessible to more people, right? And that accelerates with AI, that lets me build more things without being an expert, as you know, in coding or whatever. There's the Rashad Tabakawala point that organizational structures were about role definition and hierarchy and a two-dimensional org chart, and that's changing a lot, where we need kind of assigned roles against a task with a small group that takes on a project, and you know, a kind of amorphous organizational structure that kind of combines and disbands as, you know, different needs arise in an organization. And I think that's really true. I also think that it connects to something that confuses me, which is like, you get into a new company that set the precedent to be remote during COVID, and you may have gotten rid of an office and your organization has adjusted. Do you then go back and say, as things, you know, return to normal, everybody back to the office? And to me, like, the kind of fungibility, or you call it generalists, or the way we're working differently, kind of ladders up to org structure, ladders up to how do we construct work environments in the future where people do need to get together, but maybe they don't need to congregate 9 to 5 every day, and, you know, and spend an hour and a half commuting into New York City. So all those things are connected. And there's one other thing that I think is vitally important. And it's sort of, when you look at a change program in media, it was really, really hard to get media companies to change. And the reason that it was hard is because of role specificity against revenue streams that needed to be protected. And we said to, hey, Dave in sales, or hey, Jenny that works in audience growth or in operations, like, we need to build this new business that's different from the old one. And it never really got done because you were struggling just to hit the numbers. And so, like, the only way you change a media company is by, like, setting an objective, carving off a group of people that are sort of not, you know, distracted or committed to supporting an existing, declining in many cases, you know, kind of business outcome, and get them focused on the next thing. And that's really hard to do when your revenue's under pressure. So all of those things, I think you want people that can play lots of different roles. You want to create an organization structure that can compensate, reward, and allow people to do that. And by the way, unions want to constrict your ability to kind of evolve tasks and roles, even though their broader objective around protecting employees might be admirable and a good thing to do. So I think that we're at a time where we're really, like, rethinking notions of what it's like to go to work. And the generalist, you know, comment is, I think, part of that bigger picture.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think there's something, I haven't pieced it all together, but Alex, I want to get your thoughts on this, because, you know, I talk with a lot of people who are, I would say, in their like late 40s into like early 50s, who the career ladder kind of got pulled out from under them, really. And because I think it's particular to the media business, because, you know, a lot of the top jobs have either gone away, some of them have gone away entirely. Some of them have, you know, a lot of companies are doing fractional C-level jobs. I've heard of like fractional, like, chief product and chief technology officers at these companies, because like the pressure is quite great on them. And so people who had taken a path that was very sort of, you know, wasn't easy, right? But it was kind of straightforward. Well, then you hit your like prime earning years, okay? And guess what? The ladder's gone. Those jobs are gone, or they got shrunk. And you're kind of being like told to like, okay, find your own way, you know, and set up an LLC and like piece together a bunch of different gigs, because you're still in your prime earning years. It's tough.
Yeah, there's this meme about how the C-suites are so excited about AI replacing all those jobs, but they might be the easiest one to replace as well. Look, I trade in a very specific, it's hard to generalize, because I think there's a lot of jobs out there. Some of them we rarely talk about. that require all sorts of different paths and that are probably pretty safe, for a long time, right? Fixing our physical infrastructures like
Oh, no.
plumbers and
I'm talking about
electricians,
knowledge work,
all that
laptop
stuff.
class.
But I think, as a recommendation, that's also a good path to take if you're in the laptop class.
What am I going to tell these guys to go into HVAC at like 48?
Hey,
mean, come on,
man, it keeps you moving. No, the main thing I recommend all the time is that just like, I think specifically for designers is to just make stuff, like just start making things, right? Like I think everybody should have like 1, 2, or 3 entrepreneurial side gigs where you're learning the tools and you're learning what's available and you're building something, you're making something real. So much time is spent when people have the most amount of energy trying to learn the things you need to do to get to a job so that finally at some point you'll be able to make things. But by the time you get there, you're being pressured to become a manager. So you're not thinking about making things anymore. And just making shit is such a powerful thing to do. And today we have all the tools in place. If you're interested in moving into technology and becoming a product manager or whatever the role turns out to be, and you're not using Cursor or ChatGPT to start building your own products and having your own ideas and developing that intuition, then you're wasting your time, And if you're going to college to start learning about these things, unless you want to become kind of like a deep AI engineer or stuff like that, you're also wasting your time. I think you just need the thing about when you set yourself an ambition and you decide to do it, and then you figure out what you have to learn to get there. It's just such a better way to develop skills. And at the end of the day, if you have skills and you have more tools, you'll be able to be more valuable to an organization or to yourself, whatever you build.
Hey, Alex, on that point, I want to call out a new segment on the podcast called Random Media Item of the Week that is really a beautiful thing that I think supports your comment about a life of making an art and what it means to kind of let things into the world. And I discovered it, I think it was from Taylor Lorenz's email newsletter. And it was a 19-minute talk on YouTube that I would encourage. I don't know if you guys have watched it, but I would encourage everybody to watch it. And it's from this guy named Cable Sassar, who's one of the founders of an app development company and game company called Panic.
Oh, yeah.
And,
it's great.
And he's a quirky dude, and they've made some really interesting things.
And there's this mural on the wall that I don't even know. Oh my God. Okay. This mural was better than it had any right to be. It was the Sistine Chapel of McDonald's wall art. The brushstrokes are incredible. The lighting, and I'm actually not joking. The lighting, I love this. I love the hat. Nobody remembers Captain Crook anymore, and that's fine. But this pose, I couldn't stop thinking about this pose. It's just incredible. Oh man, there's whatever is going on there. And then there was a name in the corner, which is surprising to me for a piece of art in a McDonald's. There was a name in the corner, Wes Cook.
There's an event called XOXO. I don't know the event, but he presents at it. And the gist of it is he goes into a McDonald's in Washington State and discovers this glorious piece of art on the wall. And it's a kind of Washington kind of diorama of McDonald's characters. And he's like, holy shit, the brushstrokes, the lighting, the depiction of Hamburglar and Grimace and all of these characters. And Ronald McDonald is milking a cow. And apparently, so he starts to research this person who painted it. And it turns out that this guy led a kind of lonely life of creation in Los Angeles and was responsible for many things, including like environments at Disney Japan and this, crazy kid shows and all of this stuff. But, there's no Wikipedia page, there's nothing written about him. And it turned out he found all of his drawings on eBay and bought them all. Anyway, it's a long story about the two things that are legacies of people, the time you die and the last time someone says your name. And he found this guy and kind of like pointed a light at a very incredible life. And it was all sort of circumstantial, from like falling into this, McDonald's in Washington on a road trip. And it's an amazing product. It's an amazing story about the sort of human creative spirit. And it's really, really great.
Yeah. And I would say Panic is, the company I wish I was running. They just, do the stuff that they want to work on. They built it. It's commercially successful. And
did you see the little hardware they made called Panic Playdate?
Yeah.
It's got a crank on the side. It was designed by Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, those guys.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle engineering, yes.
Yeah. and it updates 2 games a week for 12 weeks. You don't know what you're going to get. It's a wonderful kind of serendipitous product. It's really cool company, Panic. Yeah. So that was my random media item of the week connected to your thing.
Is this connected good product? Is this like...
No, we have a different good product.
We got to wrap this up.
Well, we had a segment. We have to wrap it up. But we also had a little brief segment on mentorship. We wanted to talk a little bit about mentorship because, I don't know, Brian, you think it's not a thing, or it's overrated, or...
Well, I'm against it having been productized.
Do you have a mentor, Brian?
HR. No, I don't. And I think Gen X people think mentorship is bullshit in their hearts. I think they do.
Do you have a mentor, Alex?
I counted you as a mentor. I don't have an official
but
mentor.
I don't think it can be abusive.
No, I don't have a mentor. I don't believe... I mean, I've probably been doing what people would call mentorship with some folks, but I always find that like a little bit of a loose term. I like advisory or apprenticeship, like stuff that actually...
Apprenticeship makes more sense, and I think we need more apprenticeship, less mentorship.
You've had good bosses. Like, I've had good bosses that are kind of mentors in a way, right? Like, Mark Kingdon for a time from Organics, Steve Schwartz at Hearst, my collaboration with Matt Sanchez over many, many years. Matt's now at Yahoo. Those were all sort of collaborations, mentorships, bosses,
Okay, then define
I think Brian is talking about it the way it's been kind of like weaponized within.
Yeah, it's become productized, and it's like you get matched to a mentor, and now you're my mentee, and like it becomes just another HR exercise when it enters the corporate
And
board.
I'm thinking about it like I had a sort of personal/professional problem, and I called a guy who is just a really smart person and a really successful person. And he, in a half an hour, deconstructed it for me and helped me see my dysfunction in this process and helped me understand kind of what was really happening. And I found that kind of mentor-like relationship to be really valuable. And that happened last week. And then I've also been watching, like, my son, Seb makes records and wants to be a producer, and has been kind of isolating himself, he plays everything, he sings the backups, he does all the production, all that stuff. And a friend of mine who's a very successful music producer said, you got to stop doing that. I'm going to send you... Seb's going to Indiana tomorrow and is going to be the guy connecting cables at this crazy studio in Indiana, Fort Wayne, and is going to go in there just to learn. And the point of this person's point to Seb, this music producer, was like, you don't know anything and you need to go learn things from other people. And so that's apprenticeship, I guess, right?
Yeah, because I think apprenticeship is different than mentorship. Apprenticeship is work.
Yeah.
When we think about like colleges, like more colleges should look like Drexel, right, than like Columbia. Drexel is a great engineering school, and they send you off. Half of it is working. It's apprenticeship. You're in companies. You're doing real work, not like getting coffee. You're doing real engineering work.
I think mentorship like strokes the ego of the mentor. I think in some ways it's just become like such a common question, like who's your mentor? But yeah, I agree. I wish we had apprenticeship, especially now. I think, and it goes back to my point about doing stuff. It's just having just like in your youth apprenticeship where you dropped in like Seb, like putting cables, like making sure that stuff works, building stuff, being, having your work actually be impactful and be, reviewed by someone. And a mentor feels like just kind of this weird therapy otherwise. So I've changed my mind around it. I felt it was useful back in the day, but I always kind of wished we went back to apprenticeship, and that should be the way things work.
Well, I think we're going to have to, right? Because of the way the hollowing out of a lot of companies is happening, a lot of the roles that were played by incredibly junior people in some of these organizations, they're getting wiped away, right? So like again, that ladder doesn't really exist. Like, I mean, what Andrew was talking about was a lot of junior roles being automated away. Well, you know, because they could hire a ton of, I mean, he called them 23-year-olds, but like I thought they were 25, but okay. You know, agencies were always filled with all these people, right? And because they have to do a lot of, I don't want to say it's cognitive manual labor, but some of it kind of is, and you sort of learn the ropes, and that doesn't really. I can see that sort of disappearing. Like if you think about, like, let's say in like newsrooms, you get super junior people, they're doing a lot of aggregation at the end of the day, right? So they're not experts in anything, and they have to, you know, get there, and that's going to be taken away. So I don't see any.
Yeah, but I love this idea of unstructured kind of guidance combined, like in some cases, maybe it's tough truths or tough talks combined with love. That to me represents what mentorship is, which is, you know, I can help you see another way and I care about you. And I'm going to tell you things that maybe you don't want to hear. And I know a lot of people throw around the term, oh, my mentor, he's my mentor. In some ways, it's kind of there's an arrogance to it. Like if your mentor is successful enough, maybe that says something about you.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, I think it's a nice idea. I wouldn't dismiss it out of hand, but
I mean, I think maybe we're mostly annoyed with the way the term's being used and the triteness of it all. I think there's definitely like an ego exchange in that, like this person's my mentor and I'm this person's mentor, right? Which has devalued it somewhat. But
there's also a loss of agency in my view in that there's a lot of like appliers out there, like people who are really good in the system. I think what you were talking about, maybe to try to pull off the weave, is that the system was really set up to be really good at applying. You got the grades, you did the required extracurriculars in order to apply. So some group at a university would say, yes, you get in. And then you go through college and you apply to the internships, you get the right internships, you get like, okay, everyone gets good grades, I guess, in college these days. And then you apply to McKinsey or you apply to HBS and you see it on all, and like none of that ends up, you know, having the same kind of value, I think, in this world. Like being really good at applying for things and having, to me, like wanting to be handed a mentor through a mentorship program is just another application process. And I don't think the world is going to be as kind to those who are really good at applying than those who are a little bit more feral, I guess, out there doing stuff.
Should we just
just do good product?
All right, let's just do good product.
I don't know anything about, you know, his affairs or any alleged connection to Epstein or any of that stuff.
This is going to be a great good product.
Whoa.
What is it, Bill Clinton? It's a good product.
All I know is that he's a good friend.
I'm like, this could be like
and a mentor.
This could be like 100 different dudes.
Jesus.
Yeah. So
well, you just
to me, Bill Gates is a good product. and I find that in interviews he has a kind of nice mix of nerdiness and authority, but is personable, and he's incredibly clear and smart. And I find when he talks, it's usually, you know, I think he's a good communicator and it's valuable. And so the reason there's a lot of billionaires that get into the media business, right? So, you know, Elon got into the media business and Bezos got into the media business and Benioff got into the media business and Trump got into the media business and Ballmer got into the media business. And Bill Gates is in the media business. And, you know, he has this show called What's Next, The Future with Bill Gates on Netflix. And it's a great show. And he was interviewed by the one and only sanctimonious Kara Swisher. And I found him to be, he's like a terrific interview. And each of the episodes, I feel like he's a billionaire that goes into media for good reason, just kind of like the Ballmer thing, which is to help shine the light on important changes in society that are occurring because of changes in technology and the implications of that, and making it understandable. And so each of the episodes kind of focuses on a different challenge, like artificial intelligence, climate change, misinformation. And a lot of times, like in misinformation, he's like, I don't understand it, but let's see if we can understand it together. His focus on, eradicating disease, and there's another one on income inequality. And so he finds big thinkers in each of those categories, and some of them have, different points of view, and he gets a perspective in it. And it was a sort of eye-opening experience for him, and I think for the audience. And I think this is the right way for a billionaire to get into media. And so to me, Bill Gates, obviously at a stage in life where, he's giving away more money than he's taking in, incredibly rich. He's very human, right? Like, he's made mistakes, I'm sure, but he's an admirable character, and he's contributing to the world as opposed to taking away. And it doesn't feel like media as a vanity play. It feels like media that's kind of useful. And for that reason, I think this week Bill Gates has made good.
But he's a very controversial character these days. I think it's impossible not to be a controversial character. Beyond the Epstein stuff, like, there's a lot. I mean, I spent too much time on X, but like, there's a large group of people who believe that, like, he's trying to push vaccines on everyone, and that he's making money off them, and that he's buying up all the farmland, and that this is all just a cover.
Most of that, Brian, by the way, is misinformation, fake news, and insanity.
Yeah, this is
okay. Well, Peter Thiel was also sort of trafficking in this, so I don't know. I mean, I'm the VCs are the public intellectuals of our time.
A guy with billions of dollars is really looking to make money off of vaccines. It's not true. Yeah.
I guess the point that I was trying to make is that it's nearly impossible. I don't think it's possible to be like a billionaire and not be a recluse without being a controversial character at this point. Like, there's no like sort of, I mean, are there any sort of, who are the good billionaires left? Like
Buffett.
Yeah, Buffett doesn't get a lot of like grief. That's true.
Right.
That's a good point.
Buffett would be the example. Anyway, Bill Gates is a good product. You guys can.
I mean, maybe he's also a quirky little dude. Maybe he's got his little things going on. I don't know.
You mean he gets his freak on?
And maybe he gets his freak on, and that in ways that we wouldn't agree with. It's hard. It's hard.
It's hard to divorce it from like a little bit of reputation.
Well, I mean, it's the same thing. Like, it's the last 10 years has been all about like us, like, wrangling with the fact that we needed to divorce the art from the artist, and then the achievement from the achiever. Like, I mean, like, I have my views on Elon, and then he lands a fucking rockets and chopsticks. Yeah. Like, I'm like, how do I disconnect?
Chapeau for that.
Yeah, how do I disconnect the fact that he's also like just like a horrible human being? Like, how do I take these things apart? It's all very confusing. So the construct of Bill Gates as an intellectual, I would agree, is like he's very focused and I think very valuable. It's hard to have an opinion about the person. Otherwise, I don't know. I think if we look behind the curtain,
I've gone from like, I don't know, pomegranates or something like that to a human being.
Yes, maybe one day we'll actually recommend a product.
Yeah, well, when we see nice products, we single them out. And I think last week, and I got some feedback on this, and so did Steve, by the way. People appreciated us having Steve on, and I think he laid it down with like the super glue and all that stuff. So
that was great. That was true brilliance. I love that. You know what's a bad product? My cat.
Yeah, you should eat it.
Yeah.
All right. This is fun.
Yeah.
Have a good week.
Like and subscribe. Also, you can watch us on YouTube now, so you can.
Also, if for
See all the visual
just a
gags.
little bit longer, you get 20% off your TRB Pro subscription. And I will give partial credit to the PVA podcast for any that come in.
Oh
the next
shit!
2
Yeah,
days.
since we're making money out of that, we're all gonna start chilling it. It's a
Yeah.
great read. I recommend it. I pay full price for it.
You're not, but
All right.
thanks.
Bye.